Hi, I'm Mel.
Hi, I'm Danny, and we're the Sheehan sisters. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't seen our face before, we do podcast slash commentary style videos on topics we like to talk about. So, you wanna tell them what to do, Mel?
Grab a coffee or tea or juice or smoothie or water, whatever beverage you like to drink. Grab a snack, get settled in, get all cozy, comfy. And yeah, let's just jump into the video. This has been a long awaited video.
I am very cozy today because it is 40 degrees in New York City. So we're actually getting the cold weather now. Finally, we're in what, mid-November?
Yeah, I got sweatpants on. I'm got my sweater on. I'm actually loving the winter. I don't know what's going on, but I'm loving the cold. I don't know what's happening.
Well, technically it still is autumn.
Okay.
I did want to be a weather woman when I was younger, so wait, I have to say something before we dive into today's topics. What?
Say it.
Say it. So this might be our new segment where we say what we were spiraling about from our last episode. And as I'm watching back our fully edited, published video, I start spiraling because I'm moving my dog Nala away from the camera. And I'm texting Mel like, oh my God, the internet's going to think I'm abusing my dog. I'm just thinking of all the things that the internet is going to point out in these videos, and I need to stop. I don't abuse my dog, and I know I don't. So why am I worried? Because I'm moving her away from the camera. It's okay.
She's gently guiding her away, and she's a big dog. Like, dogs play rough with each other. No, the dog is not being harmed in any way. And also, we can't focus on the negatives because when you focus on the negatives, that's what you're going to invite in. So we can't do that.
We cannot do that, and we will not do that. It's just that like we always say, we're so aware. We're a little too aware, where we start dissecting every little movement and behavior and words we use that we end up critiquing every little minute of our videos.
Right. I do want to apologize for saying like so much. I know I don't focus on the negatives, but we're working on our speech and we do feel like these videos are helping because we're not public speakers. I don't know if you could tell or not, but we're not public speakers and we're working on articulating more clearly. All right. So let's get into the video.
Today, we are going to be diving into media we have been consuming, like television shows, movies, books. So, of course, we are going to be starting with the series YELLOWJACKETS. Mel, do you want to explain to the audience why we're talking about YELLOWJACKETS?
Yes. So we have made some previous videos on the show YELLOWJACKETS. Go check it out. We did full review on season 1 and season 2. And we did a mini review of episode 1 and 2 of season 3. And we told you guys we would come back with a full review. And here we are, months later. We're finally doing it. And I just want you guys to know, we try to stick to our word. We try to stay true to our word that we're going to do something, we'll do it. But we also are very careful not to give a timeline or a time frame. So we never lied to you guys. The video is here. We said we'd make a video, and we're making the video. Sorry that it took so long.
It's so funny because it'll take years for Mel and I to like produce something we've talked about. Not that it took that long for Yellow Jackets, but for example, we curated and created a gala for our art and our poetry. And that was years of talking about it, but we finally did it last year. Was it last year?
It was last year. Isn't that crazy? Last year, March.
Wild. So you know what? It's true. We will say we're going to do all these things, and it may not be as quick as you'd like it to be, but it will happen. And we are going to get better at staying on top of. Are we going to get better at it?
we are going to improve. Listen, we plant the seeds. Some take longer to grow than others. I did want to say this is a great point to make about procrastinating because we're talking about media. And I am someone that takes long to finish a show or finish a book. Like, let me think. I take long to finish a sentence because I don't know what the fuck I want to say. But I'll stop a show in like a random season or even sometimes in the middle of a season. And then like years later, I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably finish that show. Or sometimes I just never finish it. This is a controversial take maybe. I finally at the beginning of this year watched Game of Thrones after years of people telling me that I should watch Game of Thrones. And I never finished it. I got up to like season 6 and I was like, okay, I'm done. And that's probably gonna piss a lot of people off. And there's probably people who are like, what do you mean you didn't finish it? And I'm like, I was over it, so I didn't continue on. And Danny has never watched it and probably never will.
I won't. There are so many shows that are widely popular that people are either shocked or mad that I've never watched it. I never explored that show.
Yeah.
But I did explore Yellow Jackets. We made it through season 3. And I have to be honest, I'm not as excited about the show as I was when I first watched season 1.
Right, and we were talking about this in our last video where we talked about Yellow Jackets, and we were talking about the beginning of season 3, how we were already kind of disappointed in where the storylines were headed. And I think that's another reason it took so long for us to make a video, because we were like, okay, we didn't enjoy this season and we don't want to spend the whole video just talking about how much we hated it. Maybe people don't want to see that. But as I'm doing more research on the show to kind of refresh my memory of what happened, I'm seeing articles and Reddit threads that a lot of people had a similar thought to us, that they didn't enjoy where the show is heading.
Right, and we were already picking up on the fact that the writers probably didn't have it fully planned out. And that tends to happen with shows. You know, they'll have the initial concept and they'll have a good portion of the storyline to get through like season 1 and maybe even season 2, and then they're trying to see the reception of the show, and then they have to, if it is successful and wildly successful. I wasn't sure if I wanted to say widely or wildly, but they both work. So then once they realize that the show's successful, they're like, oh shit, we have to finish the story. And that's what I personally think happened with the show. I also think because the actress Juliette Lewis left the show, and we mentioned this in our previous commentary, I think that changed the narrative of where they were going to take the characters, because it's obvious that it was always going to be Natalie versus Shauna, and we don't get to see that fully explored in the adult timeline. So I'm guessing they had to write around that that hurdle, that obstacle, or that change of course, having the actress leave the show. In my opinion, how do you want to approach this? Should I say what I think they're going to do to conclude the show, or do we want to dive into elements of season 3?
No, give your opinion. And I just want to say before you do continue, we're probably not going to go in order. And there's so much that happens within this show. This is another hurdle of us doing commentary on the shows because there's so many timelines happening that it just gets confusing to try to talk about, especially when there isn't really a cohesive plot happening, if that makes sense, and it's not a lot of continuity. So we're trying to talk about both timelines, and that's something that I do want to get into, but I'm going to let you say your theory first.
Before I say my theory, I do have to say RIP to Coach Ben. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
I think that's the moment I really was over it. I don't know why I was in delusion that I thought he was going to survive. I think I even said this in our last commentary, but I really wanted that for him.
Well, he was the hope, and they did try to trick us there for a minute after they took a whole episode for a trial in the wilderness. Okay.
Wait, are you gonna say your theory before we get to
Yes, but I feel like, you know what, I'll wait.
because I have a lot to say about the trial, so I don't want to get on too many tangents before. Okay,
Sorry, we go on tangents. Let me bring it back. I think I'll wait to say my theory
Okay.
for the future, or where they're going to lead the show based on the events that happened in season 3. So let's just dive into the trial of Coach Ben in the wilderness.
Okay.
Because I'm mad. I'm mad. And Javi, I'm pretty sure I had hope for Javi in our last commentary.
No, I think we said that he was spineless. Maybe not those exact words. Maybe that was in our season 2 commentary where we were pissed at Javi for not speaking up more.
Yes, that was in season 2, but then when we were reviewing season 3, episode 1 and 2, I'm pretty sure I thought that there was going to be some character development for Javi. Oh my God, is it Javi or is it Travis? We always do this.
It's Travis, R.I.P. Javi. We miss him. We were very devastated by that one as well.
I think we always do this. Well, I always do this. I don't know why, but Travis looks like a Javi to me more than Javi did. I'm sorry, y'all. Travis. We're talking about Travis here. Travis, you failed me. You and whoever else sided with Shauna after vote after vote after vote of sticking to your guns, but then you finally caved to Shauna. Why would you do that?
Why? Well, this is what I'm saying. We already said that this is the kind of person he was when they already let him eat his brother. Like, after that, where do you go? Where do you go in life after you eat your brother?
I don't know. I feel like initially I didn't mind the trial scene, but looking back, I do feel like it took up a good bulk of that episode. And it didn't make sense to me that they were just repeating the votes over and over again. I feel like they should have decided another way if they clearly weren't able to get a majority.
Well, I think the reason they did that, and this is what I wanted to say, sorry to cut you off, because they titled it 12 Angry Women and One Drunk Javi, or 12 Angry Girls and One Drunk Javi, because they were referencing the play 12 Angry Men. And I do like that there are a lot of literary references in the show. And that's something we did want to talk about in this video, where we're talking about different types of media. So I think that that's what they were going for in that episode, where they were like, this is the juror and how long it takes for the jurors to decide. And they were really trying to reference that play. And I feel like that episode was kind of taking you out of the show for a moment, if that makes sense.
I would agree. I think I feel like the way that the scene developed, it kind of felt anticlimactic when it resulted in Shauna intimidating some of the teammates into voting guilty. This is a little too real with what happened in our current government.
The intimidation tactic.
Yeah.
I did want to say, for anyone who's not familiar with the play 12 Angry Men, it is a play based on a trial that's happening, and the jurors on the trial, and they're in the room, and they're trying to decide the verdict, if it's guilty or not guilty. And that's the whole play. I don't know if I gave a good summary. I read it in high school and I haven't reread it since. But yeah, it's just all based on people's opinions and people's perspectives. So I think they did a good job of referencing the play. And that's why I was saying they kind of took you out of the show for a moment, because I think they were trying to go for this reference. I feel like I just keep saying the word reference. But they're showing like how people's opinions can sway back and forth, and you kind of lose the whole point of, you kind of lose that this is an actual person on the trial.
Right. You lose the point that you're fighting for this person's life or fighting against this person's life. And that's exactly what they did with Coach Ben. They lost that humanity and compassion for him.
Exactly. And then, like you said, with Shauna intimidating them, it didn't even become about Coach Ben at that point. It came about the fear that they had that, oh my God, if I don't side with Shauna, what is she going to do to me?
And I think that was the overall theme of that season, because we see that again when they have an opportunity to be rescued and potentially go home. And I think this is a good segue into bringing up the scientists that were in the wilderness with them and ultimately discovered them and their little tribe and sacrifice ritual.
Right. So ultimately, they do decide to kill Coach Ben, but then they decide not to kill him, and then it leads to Natalie Mercy killing Coach Ben. Sorry, I'm gonna just like speed run through some of the events. Spoiler alert, if we didn't say that already. So they have their ritual that they do when they kill someone and eat them, and then that's the point where the scientists come in, which I did love that scene. I did think there was a little bit of comedy in that scene where they're doing this wild, barbaric thing, and then it's like, oh, here are normal people from the outside world entering in and being like, what the fuck is going on here?
I really liked that scene a lot too. That had me on the edge of my seat, and I was excited for the next episode after the scientists discovered them. We then find out that Lottie, good old Lottie, kills one of them because she wants to stay in the wilderness and she wants to maintain this tribe, and she doesn't want anything from the outside to disrupt their rituals.
Right. And that's where I was starting to get angry with the show, because I was like, okay, this is how they get rescued. We're getting to the point of them getting rescued. And Danny and I had talked about this off camera where we were like, what we would have liked to see in the show is them get rescued and then kind of seeing more of their life outside of the wilderness and how they began to cope after being rescued. But of course, as we mentioned in our previous commentary, they need to follow through with the pit girl of it all.
They got boxed into Pit Girl. They had to follow through. And I know we keep switching topics here, but it's revealed, to no surprise to any of us, that Mari was ultimately Pit Girl.
This is a chaotic summary, but that season was chaotic. And this is what I was saying. It's very hard to try to review this show because there's just so much happening.
I do want to talk more about Mari as Pit Girl, but before I do, I will circle back to them potentially being rescued, but ultimately because of Shauna and Taissa and Lottie, the three of them wanted to stay in the wilderness, and ultimately Shauna intimidated the rest of the crew to stay in the wilderness. What? Why did they, what's the word I'm looking for? Comply. Why did they comply? That's what pisses me off. Because sure, Shauna can be scary and be intimidating, but they had the numbers against them. They also had the two other scientists. I know Cody's not really a scientist, but he was defending them and helping them navigate through the wilderness, so I'll just loop him in as a scientist. But they had the opportunity to overthrow Shauna.
I think it was mentioned, and sorry guys, we're being a little vague because this was months ago that we watched it and we did try to do some more research to refresh our memory. But it was mentioned that if they were to go back with the scientist, then everything they did out there would be revealed to the public.
Right, they were worried about that.
So that was something where they're like, if we're going to leave this, we need to leave it all behind. And I think that's something that Shauna was worried about. And I also think she started to just become power hungry.
I agree. I think her and Lottie were on some sort of high. I mean, Lottie was on some sort of spiritual high. Shauna was on some power-driven high. And as for Taissa, I guess I'm a bit confused why Taissa ultimately folded and agreed with Shauna to stay in the wilderness.
And that's another character that I'm really sad about because I think I mentioned in our season one commentary that she was my favorite in the younger timeline, and I just feel like they did that character so wrong, especially in the present timeline where they really lost the plot on a lot of things, but definitely with Taissa, where there's still so much muddy area of things in her life. Like they just completely forgot about her wife and the son, and I don't know, that's what pisses me off. I'm sorry, I'm not completing my sentences. This is what pissed me off about the show, is they all had somewhat stable lives. They had moved on with their lives. It's like 25 years later. She's over here running for office, has, she's married, she has a kid. She's seemingly one of the more stable ones out of the group, and she's doing really well. And it is revealed that she has still been doing the rituals. But I'm just like, how did she spiral so far? And I think that that's my problem with the present timeline of like, why did they all of a sudden all decide to like throw their lives away and spiral again? I don't know.
I think that a lot of the audience is confused by that, and that's when you realize that the writers That's why I really think that the writers didn't have the full story prepared. So they have to backtrack because they are dealing with a past timeline. You know, we have this huge gap of what, 25 years? And we don't know what happened with all the girls once they got rescued and as they grew up into adults. We don't really know the full story, so we can only speculate. But it still doesn't make sense how the girls didn't carry that anger for Shauna into the adult timeline. It doesn't make sense.
Right, that was another confusing part where they kind of all had this anger towards Lottie, like, oh, Lottie's the crazy bitch. But then you see the flashbacks and you're like, Shauna is just as, if not more, crazy than Lottie. I feel like Lottie's life trajectory made sense where she became the spiritual leader. She was in the, I don't want to say asylum, I don't know. She was in some kind of psychiatric ward and then she turned into a spiritual leader. And I feel like all of her timeline makes more sense than anyone else's. Maybe even Natalie's, where she went through a lot of shit and she was like one of the stronger people in the wilderness. And then she had to kill Coach Ben, like I mentioned before. And she went through a lot of shit, and like I feel like her and Travis having their drug addictions, Travis taking his life, like I think their storylines were making sense more than anyone else's. And then when you look at Shauna and Taissa and Van and then Melissa, which is another thing we're gonna get into, where it's like some of this is not, it doesn't correlate well. And then it's like, why are we as mad at Shauna? Like they give Shauna more credit for like saving them when you're looking back at this season and she is fighting against all of them to gain power and to get them to stay and forcing them to kill Coach Ben and making all these terrible decisions.
Right. And I would even say Misty's storyline makes more sense.
I forgot about Misty. I'm so sorry.
We'll never forget about Misty, girl. We do get to see a redemption arc. Sorry, I just hit my mic, so if it sounded a little weird at that part. We do get to see a redemption arc for Teen Misty because she ultimately conspires with Natalie, and Mel and I were talking about this off camera. We're assuming some of the other girls were part of this as well. I'm not sure if that was as clear, but from what we've gathered, it seems like a plan was put in place to allow Natalie to escape and ultimately find service for what is that? Like the cellular box? I don't even know what it's called.
It was the black box. I don't know if it's called a black box. It was the box that Misty had destroyed in season 1. So her and Van and I think Taissa were working on fixing it. Or actually, no, it wasn't the black box. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't the black box. It was a box. It was a radio that the scientist had.
But they needed a piece from the black box.
Right. They used both of those to try to put it together.
And ultimately, Natalie was able to bring that radio up the mountain to get service. And the season ends with her making contact with someone. And we can only speculate that season 4, which has been confirmed, it will be the rescue, in my opinion. I think they're going to do the rescue in season 4, a little bit of the teenage timeline of what happens to them after the rescue, and then I think they're going to wrap up the adult timeline. That's how I feel.
Right, but we do know that Hannah doesn't survive, the scientist.
We don't know what's gonna happen to Hannah.
Because she left the recording, or she sent the recording. That was another strange part where they had received that recording of what was happening in the wilderness, which We didn't even get into that. We didn't get into Melissa. There's just so much to get into that it's just like, what the fuck is this show doing? It started to feel like a soap opera. And Danny and I, when we were younger, we loved soap operas and we loved dramas and we loved like Grey's Anatomy, One Tree Hill, Gossip Girl. Like, we love a show like that. But this show is just too much of what the fuck, I feel like.
So my theory is there's going to be a few more kills in the wilderness before the rescue comes. Or the girls that are still there, I don't know, maybe something happens to them after rescue, because we still don't know how that recording even made it out of the wilderness. So it could be a possibility that Hannah survived, but then they realize that they have to shut Hannah up and killed her outside of the... Did Melissa confirm she had the recording?
I thought she was the one blackmailing Shauna. Or no, because how did Shauna decide that, how did she even track her down? Because she thought it was the daughter. She thought it was Hannah's daughter.
Right. That's who she was going to go kill, essentially. She wanted to kill Hannah's daughter because she thought Hannah's daughter was blackmailing the whole group.
Yeah, I think Melissa had the recording. I think maybe there's a scene we haven't seen yet where Hannah like gives that to Melissa and is like, you make it back if this, I don't know. That, again, just a bunch of shit that I'm like, I want to be a fly on the wall of the writer's room.
I think what ultimately, and I keep saying ultimately in this video, take a sip of water every time I say ultimately.
I think we said that was our word for our last commentary too.
I think ultimately season 3 left us with more questions than answers. We still don't know who burned down the cabin. We still don't know who the old man in the cabin was. We don't know, what else don't we know?
Right, like wasn't the old man in the cabin, like he apparently owned the, like there were a lot of like mysteries that were left unsolved. Like another thing we were talking about was Thaisa seeing the eyeless man and then she's watching an old VHS and he's on a commercial and then her and Van go to the, like, I think it's like some kind of like burger shop or something.
An ice cream parlor. It was an ice cream parlor.
Ice cream parlor, and like that, none of that made any sense.
My theory, because I can only really have theories. My theory is that she developed some sort of trauma as a child.
When her grandma died.
When her grandma died. But then the grandma was the one who initially saw the eyeless man. So this is why I think the eyeless man like manifested within Thaisa at a young age because of some sort of trauma.
Right, and I think I mentioned this in one of our other commentaries where they're kind of doing like the Haunting of Hill House, if you remember that series on Netflix, where a lot of the ghosts were just their trauma resurfacing. And I think that's what they were trying to do in this show. And I kept saying, I don't think there's any actual like wilderness. I think it's just madness. And I've mentioned that before. And I think we're starting to see that more and more. But I don't think they're giving a clear answer to be like, and this is what it was. They're kind of like, I don't know, maybe this.
I have a few points to make. One, I've been wanting to rewatch, what is it called?
The Haunting of Hill House.
I've been wanting to rewatch The Haunting of Hill House. So if you want to do a chat about that, I'd be open to, because I think there's a lot of topics we can dive into with that series.
Yeah.
Secondly, do you not think they're actually in the wilderness?
No, I think they're in the wilderness, but you know how they refer to the wilderness as like an entity? I don't think there's any actual entity. Like when we found out that the screaming was just the frogs, and that's what the scientists were there to study. They were there to study the frogs. And we found out that that's what's been making the noise this whole time, where there's kind of an answer to everything. that's where I'm saying there's no actual wilderness. I do think they're in the wilderness, but I don't think there's an entity.
Right. No, I do agree with that. And we also, it was revealed that there's some sort of poisonous gas within the caves that Coach Ben was hiding in. And we did get to see more hallucinations that I think they were trying to hint at some meaningful, I don't know. I feel like they were trying to use those hallucinations for the audience to dissect and take meaning from, to better understand their mindset and what is really happening to them.
I do have a note from one of the hallucinations where they were in a classroom and Lottie was the teacher and she's writing on the board and she writes the quote, or the quote is behind her already. And it says, "Of all the ways to lose a person, death is the kindest." And it's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, so another nod to literature. And I really enjoyed that quote in the sense of that they're all kind of losing themselves out in the wilderness. And I do like that quote, like death is the kindest, because you think of other ways you could lose someone, like maybe you have a falling out and you never get to talk to them again, or you lose them to an addiction, or you lose them to their own mental health. And I feel like that's what's happening here, is they're all losing themselves. And there's even a scene where Shauna's writing in her, there's multiple scenes of Shauna writing in her journal, but she's writing in her journal again and saying that she doesn't feel powerful anymore. She's like, oh, I'm just a mother and a wife, and I'm not this powerful warrior queen. And she kind of lost herself to power. So I feel like that quote, like you said, they're trying to reveal things in the hallucinations. And I feel like that quote kind of sums up a lot of what's happening in the show, where they're all losing themselves to different, I don't know, different types of madness. I keep saying the word madness because that's all I can really think of.
No, I like your take. One can also argue that Shauna thought she was finding herself, and that's why she clung to the wilderness so tightly. And Lottie as well. But we know that Lottie has an underlying mental health illness, so that can easily be explained as to why her madness exploded.
Another literary mention that we have talked about before is Lord of the Flies. I don't know if we kept it in our videos or we took it out. We did do like a whole deep dive of comparing it to that book. And Danny and I actually started to reread the book because we both read it in high school. And that was something we wanted to do also, where we dived into the comparison of the book and the show. But also we didn't enjoy rereading. Hold on, there's like a loud ass.
I heard that too.
Rude, you're being rude. Okay.
Don't you know there should be no driving of your motorcycle while we're filming?
I literally live near a main road, so it's just people driving all fucking day at night.
Like we said, just stick around through the rough times and it'll get better here, we promise.
All right, what I was saying is Danny and I started to reread Lord of the Flies because we had this whole idea of doing an analysis of the show and the book together. But as we were rereading the book, we didn't like the book either. It's definitely one of those books where you're like, yeah, I only read this because I was forced to read it. It's still a good book.
Well, I was going to say, I think we should have given it more of a chance. You know, I do think the author was able to present the characters in a likable way. Not all of them, because there also ends up being a divide within the group that's lost on the island. So I think we should have given it more of a chance. However, we didn't. That didn't happen.
I think one of the main issues that I had with rereading it was the grammar in it, which it's an old book, so grammar has changed, but it was worded very strange to me, and I was having trouble.
Yeah, you had trouble following.
I guess, but not really.
Is it because you don't have critical thinking skills?
Rude. My reading level is only at 3rd grade, so I couldn't comprehend what was happening. It's not funny though. It's actually very serious, guys. The literary deficiency is that's what's happening, and it's really scary.
It is scary. It's worrisome. I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but I saw a video of this teacher saying that their student was like, why do I have to read this when I can just have AI read it to me?
No, and that's the thing, is these kids are growing up in the technology age, and for some reason we think we need to stay on track with that and be like, we need to stay updated. These kids need to know how to use computers and technology. But no, they still need to know how to write and read. Because another thing I've been seeing is kids not wanting to type out an essay. And we had to handwrite that shit. We had to take a pencil and a paper and sit in class and write an essay in class, okay? And you guys are complaining about having to type it out. But yeah, I do want to try to go back into the book because I want to get better at finishing things, which is a point I made in the beginning of this video where I'm not finishing shows, and I also don't finish books. I used to read all the time. I loved reading, and that's something that's pissing me off too, where we're getting so distracted by all these other things, and I'm doom scrolling, and there are times where I feel like I'm going insane, where I have my phone in my hand and I'm scrolling, and I'm like, and I'm like in my brain, like, Melanie, get off your phone, get off your phone, get off your phone. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in a psychosis, and it's not okay. And that's why we do want to make more videos where we're talking about important topics and we're trying to keep some kind of like intellect. I don't even know. Like, we want to get better at speaking because it's something that is important to us, and we feel like making these videos is helping us with our speech. And it's also making us realize, okay, we don't read as often as we used to, and we're not using our critical thinking as much as we were in the past, and like we're kind of losing a lot of very helpful tools. Like, even now I can't even get a fucking sentence out, and it frustrates me.
I do think you're making great points though. Don't beat yourself up, because I think you said some pretty valid points there. And just to bring it back to YELLOWJACKETS and Lord of the Flies, do you want to tell them the reference that you saw within the series that related back to Lord of the Flies?
Oh yeah, so at some point Misty breaks her glasses, which is a reference to Piggy breaking his glasses. And I do think they try to mirror Misty and Piggy in a similar light because they're both kind of the odd one out. Although we sadly, if you haven't read Lord of the Flies, spoiler alert, Piggy does not survive. And we know that Misty does survive, so there's like a difference in that sense.
I agree. They're also the heart of the team. Even though we've seen moments where Misty let us down, and I personally think that Misty's going to be a key player in season 4 in the adult timeline. Right. It seems like at the end of season 3, Thaisa and Misty are going to team up to finally destroy Shauna, which, yeah, great, love that. But we're all confused as to, well, what happened all those years prior? Because when we saw them in the adult timeline, they had a fairly, I don't want to say decent they had some sort of, they really didn't have a relationship with Shauna, but they weren't nasty or angry or resentful towards Shauna in a lot of the scenes we've seen in the adult timeline. So we're not sure what is going to happen once the girls are rescued and how they are able to patch up their relationship with her after all the shit she did to them in the wilderness. So I'm curious to see where they're going to lead that storyline.
Well, I have two theories. One, they've either repressed so much that they don't fully remember everything that happened out there, and or two, they succumbed to Shauna being their leader, and they kind of still look at her in that lens where they're like, okay, Shauna, like, what do we do?
Right.
Because even in the adult timeline, she fucks up a lot. Where she killed, what was his name in season 1? That she killed the guy that she was seeing. Adam, yeah, she kills him thinking he was the one blackmailing them. And like, she fucks up a lot even in the future. So it's just like, why do they keep forgiving Shauna? She becomes my least favorite character. And I do have empathy for all the shit she did go through. And I think we talked about in season 2, where I was like, oh my God, Shauna went through so much more than anyone else, because obviously she had a whole pregnancy out in the wilderness. So like, maybe that's another thing that they also hold on to, where they have the empathy of like, oh, she went through all this loss.
Well, to piggyback off of that, I'm using all the corporate lingo today, guys. Listen, I had to take something from me being a corporate girly for a small period there. To piggyback off of that, we see Lottie's relationship with Callie develop because she seems to view Shauna's child as a product of the wilderness, or like the child of the wilderness, and wants to develop a relationship with Callie, which we did think was going to happen, and they did show certain scenes where it seemed like they were getting along and building a relationship. But as we all know, what ultimately happens, Callie kills Lottie. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused about that. And, you know, they presented it as like Lottie embracing the kill because she sees the power of the wilderness within Callie. But I just think that they still didn't know where to go in the adult timeline.
Right, I feel like it didn't fully make sense, but then it's also like Callie kind of seeing her mother in her and is like worried that she's turning into the same kind of person, which ultimately also leads to Jeff, who I think we've cut out all our Jeff rants, but we have gone on a lot of rants about how much we don't like Jeff. And I'm finally like, okay, another male character that grows some balls and speaks up and stands up for himself. And it finally takes his daughter committing murder for him to be like, okay, I need to get away from Shauna and I need to take my daughter and we need to leave. So it is a catalyst for change in that aspect, where Lottie's death did do that, but it's also like, why did we kill Lottie?
Right, I really thought there was so much more to explore for adult Lottie. But to circle back to my theory, I believe that they are ultimately going to kill off all the adult characters.
Right, because then they kill off Van as well, which again doesn't. I think it also helps with my theory that it's just madness and there is no wilderness, because Thaisa is leaning so hard into doing these rituals, and she thinks that everything she's doing is going to save Van, and she keeps trying to give sacrifices and do all these different prayers to keep Van alive, but again, ultimately, our word of the day. Van dies, so everything Taissa did is kind of in vain because nothing actually stopped that from happening.
And the way Van dies doesn't make sense to me. I never really saw Melissa as a key player. So again, we don't know what's going to happen to Teen Melissa during the rescue and after the rescue. For her to still be so attached to the wilderness and the rituals, because at some point it did seem like she was realizing how fucking crazy Shauna was and was pulling back a little bit within the teen timeline. But then ultimately, as an adult, still feels the wilderness's pull and the evil that it embodies and kills Van as a sacrifice for the wilderness. I'm trying to make sense of it.
Was it for the wilderness, or was it kind of like it's me or you again scenario where they were in the house and like someone set the gas off? I don't know if it was Melissa trying to kill Shauna or Shauna trying to kill Melissa.
I believe it was Melissa who set the gas off.
Okay.
But what happens is Van was about to kill Melissa, and Melissa was like, okay, go ahead, go do it, make me the sacrifice. And then Van stops herself and she's like, why can't I be that? And then Melissa takes a knife and says, well, I am that, and kills her. What has Melissa been doing this whole time that connects her to the wilderness? We know she married Hannah's daughter, so I'm curious how she, like, maybe that relationship is her attachment to the wilderness still, and I'm assuming she hides her own rituals from Hannah's daughter. There's just still so much we have to speculate on because there's quite a few plot holes in this season.
Right, and I almost just want to stick with the show just because I want them to conclude things, even though it's been proven time and time again that they're not concluding anything fully. They're kind of sprinkling things here and there. Well, and it's like if the show is just them all dying off, it's like, what was the purpose of the show?
I did want to ask you a question about your theory. Here comes Nala. Here comes Nala. She said she was quiet this whole time and she needed to make an appearance. What's the matter? Come lay down. Come lay down. It's okay. Lay down. She's been on the couch snoring this whole time.
If you had gotten a tiny dog, you could just be holding her right now.
I don't like tiny dogs. I did want to ask you, what are your theories on the plane scenes when the characters are killed? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, and I have a theory that I just thought of right now when that you mentioned that. Maybe they were all meant to die in that crash. Kind of like a Final Destination, you know, where it's like we were all meant to die. I think that's the first Final Destination where they were on the plane, right? And it was gonna crash. And then they didn't, and it's like we're all gonna die in the order that we were sitting in, kind of thing. Which, if anyone, I'm sure someone out there has done it. Maybe are they dying in that order? But I think it's kind of like maybe that's why they're killing everyone, even in the future timeline where they were never supposed to escape that fate of dying. Maybe that's a good theory that I have that I just randomly thought of. But I'm thinking maybe that's why they end up back on the plane. Or we have a kind of lost situation, which I don't fully remember what happened in that show. And I think we also cut out our whole we had a whole comparison of Lost. I think we cut that out though of our last commentary for season 2. But I think in that show it ended up being not a dream, but something of that sort where it's like none of it actually happened.
I think it was some sort of, I want to say time travel. I'm not, I didn't finish that show. I think I started the first season, maybe the second. And that was when it was premiering on TV. So I never ventured to complete that series.
I remember there being a polar bear at some point.
Yes.
But I think it has something to do with that, where maybe they were all meant to die in the plane crash, or maybe they all actually did die in the plane crash, or something of that sort, where that's kind of the theory of when they're all dying, they end up back there.
Listen, if they all died and this is just, unless one person survived and they're in the coma and this is just a hallucination of like a fever dream coma situation, I'm gonna be pissed.
I think with the way the show's been going, they might cop out to that. But I do think it's gonna be Shauna left. Who do you think is gonna be the sole survivor?
I told you my theory. I think they're all going to die.
Oh, every single one of them?
Yeah, I think all of them. I think Melissa's going to die, Thais is going to die, Misty's going to die, and Shauna's going to die.
Okay.
Is there anything more you'd like to say about YELLOWJACKETS?
No. I'm sorry if this video was not cohesive because we're very scattered on this, but it's a very scattered show, as I keep mentioning. There's just so much happening.
I feel like those that watch the show are watching this podcast for a reason, because they want the commentary on season 3, so they'll be able to follow along with our opinion. All I want to say is justice for Coach Ben and justice for Javi.
That was heartbreaking. Yeah, and it's one of those shows where you know a lot of people are gonna die, but it's still devastating to watch, especially the way in which they do it, and then they're eating people, and you're just like that shock factor is still there.
Right, and before we end our conversation on YELLOWJACKETS, when we have to bring up Pit Girl, we have to circle back to that. They clearly shot that scene before they had their cast and before they knew where the storyline was going. So they did try to intertwine that initial scene with the new Pit Girl scene, if you're following me.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see them like flashing back and forth between the Pit Girl scene in season 3 compared to the beginning Pit Girl scene in season 1. So they tried their best to make that cohesive. I just feel like it's obvious they weren't sure where they were going to go with the show. They had a great initial idea, and I was very interested in season 1, and I binged that all in one night. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of shows is the full idea isn't developed, so they do have to do a little bit of backtracking, like with Stranger Things, for example. That's another show I'll be watching the final season on, but we know they had different plans for that show as well.
I know that for Stranger Things, and I think now we're done with YELLOWJACKETS, we're going to be moving on to talking about other shows. But like for Stranger Things, I know that they did have a plan for the whole show. They knew how they wanted it to. They knew start, middle, end. They had the whole story planned out. But unfortunately, with filming and with streaming services, it's harder to know when your show's going to get renewed or not. You have to wait longer than how it was back in the day, where you'd have a new episode each week and they were filming kind of as it was going for some shows. Whereas now it's like you have to have the whole season filmed and then put it out and then wait to see the reception before they decide if they're going to renew you. And unfortunately for that show, it didn't work for them because the cast was growing up. So now it's like, okay, this show is about kids and now they're 25 years old. So I do feel bad for the writers of that show because I have watched interviews and I do know that they did have a full storyline. They did know how they wanted to end it. And I think they still are trying to keep with that, but because of how networks and streaming work these days, they weren't able to do it in the timeline that they wanted to do it in.
So what I read was they initially wanted to make Stranger Things. What's the word I'm looking for? They were going to have each season be a different story and a different cast. Kind of like
Different character.
Sorry?
Like a different character.
Yeah, they were just like the first season was going to be Will Byers and then the second season will be about, another character.
Right.
But the audience and I think the writers and producers really liked the cast they had for season 1, so I think they wanted to build off of that momentum and that attachment the audience had with those actors. So in my opinion, I think they may have had an idea of what the world of Stranger Things would be, but it wasn't necessarily supposed to be with just that same set of actors and characters. So they had to work around developing the show around those specific characters.
Well, I thought the show was always going to be about 11.
See, that's what I'm confused by because I read, let me try to find the article. It was supposed to be an anthology.
Oh, look, says Reddit. Why do so many people believe the whole show was planned from the start? Because that's what they told us.
But I feel like maybe the Duffer Brothers were like, oh, let's create the narrative that we knew the whole storyline from the beginning. Like, I don't know. Right. I feel like they wanted to present it as like, yeah, we always wanted it to be this way, but I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Someone says there was an interview with the Duffers a while back, like between season 2 and 3, where they said something like that they had a rough idea of the background with the lab and what happened to the other numbers. That's what I'm saying. It was supposed to be about 11 and like they had a storyline in mind of what they wanted. Oh, okay, someone said a game of telephone turned into they planned the whole thing. Okay, so maybe that happened to me where I misinterpreted something that they said. Because they're also following another goal that they had was to kind of follow like a Dungeons and Dragons theme of a storyline. Because that's also where a lot of the characters and that's also one of the bases for their plot.
In this article it says, when the concept of Stranger Things was first pitched, the series was presented as an anthology series like American Horror Story, the different themes of which completely transform each season. Okay. It's difficult to envision a Stranger Things story completely dropping the previous season's events, but the Duffer Brothers intended for Eleven's tale to be concluded within one installment.
Oh, okay.
The creators took inspiration from Stephen King's It when it came to the show's development, since they toyed with the idea of a major time jump involving a brand new story. It also makes sense that an anthology format would have been considered since the popularity surrounding the show, like American Horror Story, True Detective, and Fargo, were established before Stranger Things came to fruition.
Okay, yeah, and then I'm seeing like what you said, where the cast did really well, where they wanted to see the story through with these actors. I think they also weren't planning on there being so many pauses in filming.
I agree. Listen, I am excited to watch the last season of Stranger Things. I do have my own critique about the series as a whole. I just wanted to briefly mention it as far as like the writing goes, because I feel like so often we're seeing these streaming series disappoint their audience, not only because of production delays, but also because the story isn't fully formed. So we get attached to an idea of where the story may go, and then the writers start to confuse their audience by trying to either backtrack or change the narrative along the seasons. Not change the narratives completely, but they end up like I guess the narratives of each characters sometimes it doesn't make sense from where they first started to where they are now by the end of the season.
Right, and I think we talked about this in our first commentary of YELLOWJACKETS about there's not many shows where there is a cohesive storyline from season 1 to season whatever it ends on. I think at some point a lot of these shows, whether it was from a network or a streaming service, where they start to lose the plot and start to feel like they need to do all these things to capture the audience attention, but ultimately it ends up ruining the show. And I had mentioned earlier watching Game of Thrones, and I know that that is based off of a book. I've never read the books, and I honestly don't really want to. There's a lot of storylines in that show that I was uncomfortable with. um, but anyway, I researched that there was, I think, 5 books, and that season 1 to 5 was based on all the books, and those were the seasons I actually enjoyed. I was like, oh, this is really good. You can tell that there was a storyline happening, and then the show I think went on to 7 or 8 seasons. So obviously after that they had nothing to base it off of, so they were kind of just going on their own. And I know they changed a lot from the books and the show, like it wasn't exactly how it was supposed to be, but I think for the most part it felt cohesive in those seasons. And then after that I really did lose interest, and it made sense when I looked into it that I was like, oh, okay, well they were following the books. It was actually already written out for them, and they had something to follow along with. So I think there's like a lot of shows where they don't have anything that they're really following. They're kind of just making it up as they go, and that's something that Danny and I often have a problem with when we're watching TV shows, where we're like, well, where is this headed? Because we like to write, we like to think of ourselves as writers, and when you're writing a story out, you yeah, sometimes you're just kind of going free writing, but you have to start to think of, here's the here's the beginning, the middle, and the end. That's how you write a story. That's what you're taught in school. And even writing an essay, it's like, here's the intro, here's the middle, here's the conclusion. Let's put it all together. And I feel like in a lot of shows they're really just worried more about how can this have a shock value, and how can this get attention, rather than actually having a storyline. If you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And yes, I am a writer. Not only do I think of myself as a writer, I am, okay? I'm speaking it into an existence. And I've written plenty of short stories. I haven't fully delved into writing a full novel, so I can understand the difficulty of keeping that storyline, especially if you are developing multiple books based off of one story. So I can see how it becomes difficult for the writers to stay on track, or to keep things cohesive while also satisfying the audience. I feel like when you and I are watching a series, we do put on our writer's hat and we try to get into the minds of the writers to better understand how they develop these ideas. And as someone who is a writer and has developed stories, I do have to stop and ask myself questions and try to fully understand the purpose of what I'm writing and the purpose of these characters and where I want to take these characters. So I'm sure I don't know, I'm just trying to sympathize with the writers as, you know, years have passed since they first written season 1 to get to the point where they can conclude the story in a way that feels fulfilling and also feels validating to the characters and exciting to the audience.
Right, and I think there's a lot out of their control, as we mentioned, so we're not trying to beat them up too much. And I know there have been a lot of writer strikes in Hollywood because they don't get paid enough. And another conversation I wanted to bring up really quick was I think we talked about this, where TV shows are now kind of dumbing down what they're kind of dumbing down their dialogue because they know that people are not paying full attention, or they're on their phones and they're doing all these other things and not really paying attention to the show. So they're kind of dumbing down their dialogue to make it easier to follow along because they know that the audience isn't fully paying attention. Did we talk about this before off camera?
We haven't talked about this, but it is an important topic to talk about. I do think it's unfortunate that has to be the case. But
I think
we all find ourselves getting distracted trying to watch a movie or trying to watch a TV show where, I don't know if this happens to you, but I'll just like automatically pick up my phone and open YouTube. It's like, you're already watching something. Keep your attention on one thing.
that's what I'm saying. It's become such a weird addiction. And I think this is gonna be a cliffhanger to us in our next podcast. I want to talk more about our phone addictions and media literacy and just literacy rates in general, because we as a society are struggling. And like you said, yeah, I'll go and I'll pick up my phone. Sometimes, right now I currently don't have a TV, but there was a point when I did have a TV and I'd have my TV, my laptop, my phone, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why do you have 3 screens in front of you? And I was thinking about, this is a book that Danny and I want to reread as well, Fahrenheit 451, and we both bought it, and we do want to do a little bit of a book series, or at least a point in the podcast where we dedicate to a book that we're reading. And I was thinking about that book when that was happening, because in that book they mentioned how people are just inside and there's just a big screen on the wall and that's all they do. And I was like, no, never. And I used to be a very avid reader, and I've gone to the point where the most recent book that I'm reading has been taking me like 4 or 5 months to get through. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on?
I know that, you know, hold on, sorry, I'm thinking of my words. Think of your words, think of your sentences. Literature is important to us, which is why we've been making it more of a habit to read again. And we also want to encourage and inspire those that are watching to start reading again too. If you have continuously been an avid reader, love that. Keep going. But if you are like us, where you've noticed that you haven't picked up a book in a year or more, or you have a book that you can't get through, then we want to inspire those that watch us to read more and inspire ourselves to read more. I think the most recent book Mel and I finished was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And we did want to do a video on that as well, but I think well, you tell me your opinion, Mel, but I think by the end of it, we had more critique of the book than enjoyment.
Right, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that's another point I wanted to bring up with us even talking about YELLOWJACKETS, where it's like, even if you don't like something, I think it's okay to still talk about it. I don't know, obviously. Where even I was gonna say, like, I saw this post one time where they're like, oh, if you can't get through the book, it's because you don't like it and you should just stop reading it or something like that. And I'm like, no, if you don't like, just continue on with it. Like I mentioned Lord of the Flies earlier, and I was like, I do want to finish this book, even though I'm kind of like, I don't really care for this, because it's going to help me. It's going to help with my speaking skills. It's going to help with my critical thinking skills, or even us talking about YELLOWJACKETS, where we have all this critiques of it, and there's people who might be like, oh, all of this was negative. But as we were mentioning, and we keep mentioning, critical thinking, where it's okay if you didn't like something, and it helps for you to understand why you didn't like it and what aspects of it you didn't like, and then have a conversation about that. When you think back to English class, that's kind of what it was. It was everyone having this discussion of what they thought of the book and the meaning that they saw behind certain things, and what metaphors they picked up on, and what, you know what I'm saying, like different, just having a discussion. Like I think that that's something that's we're losing in society as well, where it's like, well, I don't like this and I'm done. And that's what I mentioned in the beginning of this video, where I start a show and then I'm like, oh, I don't like this anymore, I'm gonna stop. And I'm trying to get better at finishing and completing things. And that's also something with starting this YouTube channel, where we're like, no, we need to be consistent, and it helps us overall in life to stay consistent with something.
It helps us be impeccable with our word.
Right. And I think all of this has meaning to life. And I'm kind of losing it again. Once again, I'm always losing it. And that's something I don't like, where I'm trying to form a fucking thought or sentence and it goes nowhere. And that's very frustrating for me.
It's okay. You still made... Oh my God, I just heard something fall and nobody's home. Oh my God, I don't know if it was the wind.
It was the wind.
It was the wind. It was the wind. I have chills. Oh my God. Okay, I'm protected. I'm protected. I'm protected.
It's the ghost of all the authors coming back to haunt us.
Who wrote Lord of the Flies?
William Golding.
William Golding came. The ghost of William Golding came to tell us how he feels. He said, "Read my damn book, because it has an important message about civilization and authoritarianism." That's what I was going to get into with Shauna, but that was like, this is a little too real with what's happening in our current administration, and I just don't know if I can speak fully on those comparisons.
Right, and that's why we do want to do more videos, and that's why I was saying, like, literacy, media literacy, and even just like reading is very important, because there's so much symbolism in everything, and there's meaning behind everything. And I don't know.
And that's the podcast.
Another thing is we started filming for too long, and then
Yes, we have been filming for a while. We do end up getting disruptions while we film, but we are being consistent and we're following through. I think that is our message of today. Follow through with your goals, with your tasks, with your books. You know, obviously it's not as important if there's a show you didn't finish watching, especially if the show is catering to the brain rot and devaluing their dialogue. Does that work? Devaluing their dialogue? Or what's the word? Like something their dialogue. What word do I want to use?
see, and this is another reason to read because it extends your vocabulary.
We need to expand our vocabulary. They're dumbing down their dialogue.
Right. I think it's funny for English speakers because like this is the only language we speak and we still can't even speak it. Like, what the fuck? It makes me worried for the future too. Scary. Anyway, we're gonna get more into that in our next episode. Let us know what shows you guys are watching, what books you're reading, what do you want. If you have any recommendations for us.
We do have more shows and books we want to talk about, so stay tuned. We may delve into our opinions on the Bell Jar. I know that was another influential book for its time. It may be a bit outdated at this point, but I do think there are important messages in that book as well.
Right, and that's another thing I want to bring up in our next video, talking about things not aging well. And another show we started and we wanted to do commentary on was Severance. We watched the first 2 seasons of Severance and we did enjoy that. So let us know if you guys have watched that show. We want to talk about that as well. So just know that while we were gone, we were planning a lot of videos that we wanted to do, but we've been working and, you know, just out there and in the world living life.
Living life, surviving, trying to be present, I suppose, because if our messages get off the phones, then we did get off our phone for recording wise.
Yeah, I know it's kind of difficult to like get off your phone while we're on it, but I think, and something I've been trying to do with even Instagram, where I'm like, okay, like let me at least follow people who have a message that's important. Let me try to follow someone who's going to educate me. Let me follow someone that's going to teach me something, so that when I am scrolling, it's not just brain rot and stupidity and I'm consuming something of substance. So I think that's what Danny and I also want to bring to the internet. I know we're not doing the best job of that, but
no, we're doing great. We're doing great. We said we're not going to beat ourselves up.
No, I know, but I got to be honest about where I'm at.
That's what we're bringing to the internet, honesty.
We do have degrees. Danny has an English degree, so she has.
Well, don't let them know that, because then it's really going to put the pressure on me.
I just have a culinary degree, okay? I don't know. Actually, my degree is in applied science, culinary arts. So it makes it sound smarter than I am.
I did graduate from college. Okay.
I did finish community college, so you know that's still an accomplishment.
It is, because there's a lot of kids that don't even want to go to college anymore, whether it's community or what is the other one? Major university.
Right, and that's what I'm worried about, and that's what another topic we want to talk about is teachers, and we are so sorry to the teachers out there, how they've been struggling with this newer generation.
I think we'll tackle
some of these topics in our next podcast, but we may have to extend some of these topics throughout a few episodes.
Yes, I think in the next one I want to present some videos to Danny and to you guys, and we'll come a little bit more. We'll come better prepared in the next one.
We're prepared. Why are you? Why are you talking so negatively about us?
I'm not talking negatively. There's nothing wrong with improving. Improving doesn't mean you're doing bad, but you can always do better.
Yes, and that's today's message from DMS.
Yes, the word of the day was ultimately. I know it's been our word of the day before, but we're bringing it back.
Yeah, but ultimately is not really a high vocabulary word.
With the grade levels these days, I'm telling you, it's not. It's getting really bad out there. The proficiency levels are really low.
Listen, Mel and I volunteered to read to students to help improve their literacy.
We were tutors for a small period of time, and that's why I really, really empathize and sympathize with the teachers out there, because it's not easy. It's not an easy thing.
I have thought about writing a children's book.
Me too. To help them read. I just have it. Mine's just the fun one.
Well, I have multiple ideas. We were reading Lemony Snicket at a young age. How old were we?
We started reading that in elementary school, and I think we finished it to middle school. Yeah, we are a series of unfortunate event girlies. We were not the Harry Potter girlies, okay? But series of unfortunate events. And that's a point I've seen people make too, where they were like teenagers, like middle schoolers back in our day, were writing full-on fan fictions and stories and like we enjoyed reading. There was always a new book. There was Harry Potter, there was series of unfortunate events, there was Goosebumps, there was Twilight, there was Hunger Games. Like we were all collectively reading books around the same time. Like, and when a movie came out about a book, we wanted to read the book that it was attached to, and we wanted to be in with it. And I don't see that happening anymore with this younger generation. It's making me sad. What are you guys reading? I mean, I think our audience is our age, but if there are any younger viewers out there, what are you reading? And if you're not reading anything, go read. Go read Goosebumps. Go read Series of Unfortunate Events. Go read Hunger Games. Like, read. Read Lord of the Flies.
Mel and I actually wanted to do videos on a series of unfortunate events, and we wanted to reread those books because there's 13 books in that series. It's so good.
So good, and it teaches you so many words. And there's so much continuity that it calls back to so many things.
See, that's a writer right there. Lemony Snicket.
Yeah, there's a lot of books we want to reread and new books we want to read because we want to bring that back into our lives, because it was something that brought us a lot of joy. Like, I love the library, and I still love going to the library, and that was always like my safe space as a kid. And it's like, what's happening to kids these days? Just want to be on their phone, and I see myself succumbing to that, where I'm doom scrolling and I'm just on my phone or on YouTube. And we need to take some time to just quiet our minds and do nothing maybe, and then fill our minds by reading and watching things that have meaning to them.
Right, because I find myself overthinking about other things while I'm reading, and then I have to reread that line and getting frustrated that I can't concentrate on one chapter because I keep finding distractions.
And that happens to me when I'm watching a show too, where I have to keep rewinding because I'm missing what's happening. And this is why I do try to watch shows that are engaging, and I want them to be engaging so that I'm only focused on that and I'm following with what's happening. because it's helpful with our memory as well. We don't all want to end up having poor memory or end up with, like, God forbid, Alzheimer's or something like that. Like, that's why reading is so important for your brain. Our brains are turning to mush. And that's what scares me about the younger generation, because you're a sponge when you're younger. And if you're not absorbing anything, like, what's going to happen?
It is unfortunate that a lot of the stupidity and brain rot on the internet is what's most popular and ends up gaining so many views.
Right.
It's wild how the dumbest things are the most popular.
I do enjoy watching lighthearted things. But yeah, like, I still wanted to have some kind of, like, it's lighthearted, but I still have to use my brain. Does that make sense? Where it's like you have to get the reference to get the joke, or you have to have there's callbacks to another episode or something, so you have to follow along. You have to remember what's going on. Where, like you said, it's just like dumb things, and it's like there's nothing behind it.
There's nothing behind it. There's no meaning behind it. We still don't know what 6-7 is, and we may never will.
No, I know. I did a deep dive.
What's the meaning?
So it's in a song, and the song was being used in, like, a lot of sports edits is what I saw. And in the song they say 6-7, so then it kept getting, like, edited, and then it turned into the meme. There's really no meaning behind it, but there was an origin. There is a point of origin. But I think kids don't care to look into the point of origin, whereas adults were like, what is this? Because I think a lot of the memes and jokes we grew up on as millennials, there was a story behind it.
I saw this skit from a YouTuber who caters to like millennial skits, and she was doing a bit on the 6-7, and then she plays two characters. So she has like the past character who's the past younger millennial of herself, and then it's her in present day, and then the present day is like trying to figure out 6-7, and her past self is like, what are you doing? And she's trying to, the present day character is trying to explain to the past character about 6-7, and then the past character was like, oh, okay, but do you guys have flying cars yet?
Right. From what I've read, and I'm trying to still find it now, where everyone's just like, there's no meaning. And it's like, essentially, yeah, there's no meaning. But I think from what I know, it came from like a song or an edit.
Listen, I just think of Lil Wayne, 6 foot, 7 foot.
Someone wrote, there's someone who's like star 6-7. Remember that?
Yes.
Which we had, that's what I'm saying, as long as we'd had dumb things like the damn Daniel, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was a vine of someone just going up to this kid at school saying, damn Daniel, back at it again. And then we all just say till this day, damn Daniel. Like, it still gets referenced. And there's no meaning behind that, but at least there was some kind of substance to the video, I guess. He was on Ellen, okay? That didn't age well either, but you used to get on Ellen for things like that.
Oh my god, I actually haven't seen a damn Daniel reference in a long time, so you just unlocked something for me.
Like, we had our own little funny jokes back in the day. It's not even back in the day.
We do have our insiders.
Yeah. So as I understand, like, let the kids have their inside jokes, because every generation, I think, has an inside joke. But I do think it's kind of consuming them in a sense. Like, we knew better And I was saying this to Danny, and sorry, this video is going longer than we wanted to. So again, we're gonna leave you guys on a cliffhanger. But I was talking to Danny how there was always like 1 or 2 kids in the class that were disruptive, that were like, you know, referencing the vines and referencing jokes and saying funny things to get attention. And now it seems like, from what I'm hearing from teachers, that it's the whole class, like it's every student now that's partaking in the joke and like not letting and being disruptive in class, and it's kind of taking over everything.
Yeah, we do want to dive more into that topic because I've been seeing a lot of videos from the teacher's perspective on how it is to teach these children. And I also see a lot of teachers are quitting. So we do want to discuss that, and we do want to discuss more of what we've been reading and what we've been watching. And we want to discuss the importance of what?
Reading, critical thinking, reading, comprehension. Yeah, all of the above.
And to end the podcast, Mel and I went back and forth on having long videos because of people's short attention span, and we ultimately decided that we like filming for an hour plus, so we might as well be authentic and upload that long of a video, and whoever wants to watch all of it will watch all of it. And if you can't sit through the full podcast, fuck you. No, I'm just kidding.
We have a lot to say, and I think, well, that's the thing too. I think podcasts for our generation, maybe more so, has become more popular. Like, I do enjoy listening to a podcast. Like, I listen to a podcast and I get things done. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this podcast and I'm gonna clean and I'm gonna do my dishes and I'm gonna do other things, and it helps me be a little more productive as opposed to just sitting there and being and brain rotting. So I have been enjoying podcasts because I do feel like it's helping me and I am listening and paying attention. But I want to get better at like watching a movie and watching a show and taking that fully in and not getting distracted, if that makes sense. But yeah, the attention span has been getting worse, and we don't want to cater to that.
We don't, and we won't. And we're so happy you're still here. If you're watching it up until this point, we love you. Thank you. We're so happy to have you.
I did the millennial heart.
The millennial hearts. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we can't wait to chat with you again next time. Any last words, Mel?
Come back and hang out with us again and leave your comments down below. That's it.
We'll see you next time.
Bye. We did it, Joe.
We did it, though.